All my priestly life, of course, has been spent in the Archdiocese of Halifax and Halifax-Yarmouth. And so the Basilica, the Cathedral, the Mother Church of our Archdiocese, is significant. It's the second oldest cathedral in Canada. And I've been privileged to be rector of the cathedral on 2 occasions for a total of 13 years. And one of my fondest memories is of being present when Pope John Paul II made a visit to Halifax, and now St. John Paul II. And we, of course, had a gathering here at the Cathedral Basilica. And I have very fond memories of that occasion. Well, the cathedral parish, of course, has been part of the life of the city of Halifax and the province of Nova Scotia since its beginnings in 1820. And during that period of time, of course, it reflects the colonial period in which we lived, and all of the political intrigue that went on during the political period, the colonial period. And during its 200th year history, it has witnessed the history of Halifax and of Canada, really, in so many ways. We've gone through 2 world wars, through a period of sickness following the war with the Spanish plague, and the church provided comfort to those who were ill at that time, as we're doing today, with our present crisis in Canada and around the world, with the new threat to our well-being and welfare. It has gone through 2 world wars. It has gone through the Halifax explosion, when it suffered some damage, the windows having been blown out and later replaced. And they are a significant part of the attraction to the Basilica, even for people who don't express the same kind of faith that the cathedral represents. So, yeah, it's the 4th Prime Minister of Canada was a parishioner here, Sir John Thompson, and his funeral was held here after he died attending a Commonwealth conference in England in the presence of Queen Victoria. The significance of the cathedral, geographically speaking, is important for a number of reasons. The spire, which is 189 feet tall, served as a navigational point for ships and for local fishermen coming into the harbor and exiting the harbor, which is one of the most important harbors in the history of our country for commerce. The Basilica, of course, has been part of the life of the community for as many years as it's been in existence, which is 200 years. It has seen, it's been a place of worship, of course, for the entire community. And culturally speaking, its architectural significance is not to be overlooked at all. It has the tallest granite spire in North America. It also is located opposite the historic burying grounds that goes back to colonial times. And the community is very much reflected in the architecture itself. When the renovations in the 1800s were taking place to give it the prominent cathedral, the ceiling that we have today, no one locally had the wherewithal to be able to complete it. And so shipbuilders, and of course that's part of our culture, fishing and shipbuilding and so on, were brought in to complete the very tall ceiling that is part of our present day rendition of the cathedral. Also, it's significant because during its building, the native peoples of maritime provinces, the indigenous people, contributed greatly to the cathedral and were very much involved in the cathedral as we see it today. And in fact, the Grand Chief of the Mi'kmaq people was very much involved in that. It was recognized by a former bishop, Bishop Hannon, and today the indigenous people still accept the importance of the cathedral, and annually on the 1st of October they come to celebrate the Friendship Treaty of 1752, and it's always a great gathering of indigenous people from Atlantic Canada, as well as prominent representatives of municipal and provincial and federal government. During the Second World War, of course, everyone is familiar with the Von Trapp family that escaped the war environment of Europe and found landfall here in Halifax during their escape. One of the things they did was, as a family, they performed here at the cathedral. And the cathedral also has hosted Caruso, a celebrated opera singer of his time. And more recently, when I was here as rector, I was privileged to have Natalie McMaster, who still, of course, is very prominent in the entertainment industry, would oftentimes come here to perform and to record some of her music because of the acoustical environment that the cathedral provides. One of the most important aspects of the cathedral, of course, are the stained glass windows. And during the terrible explosion of 1917, called the Halifax explosion, the largest man-made explosion before Hiroshima, when so many died so tragically, over 2,000 victims here in the city of Halifax lost their life. The windows in the cathedral were damaged beyond repair. They were all blown out by the force of the explosion, and were replaced later on by the same German company that had installed the original windows. And the windows that we see today, while not replicas, they are the product of the same company. And the color that we see manifest in the windows is very unique. And when I speak to tourists, and I do speak to tourists a lot, many come from Europe, and many come to see the windows because they know their history. And of course, the windows, by the same artistic endeavor, aren't available in Europe anymore because of the war and the damage to buildings that would have housed the windows. So they come here to see these windows by Fritz Mayer.
Well, the Basilica features very prominently my priestly life. I'm born and raised in Halifax. I was ordained in the year 2000 and was assigned here as a junior priest for 2 years. And then I returned 6 years later to become rector. And now I've come back as rector for a second tenure. So I was ordained a priest here. I have had members of my family married here. I buried both of my parents here. So the Basilica features very prominently in my personal life and my priestly life. My favorite single memory of being at the Basilica is my ordination. I was ordained on a Friday night here on May 5th, the year 2000. It was a beautiful time of celebration. My family was with me, my friends from far and wide, and I keep a photo of that event on my desk even today. It's a happy memory. Other significant times have been when I have had the opportunity to preside at my parents' funerals here. A difficult time, as one might imagine, but an important time for me personally. The Basilica has impacted Halifax by being a witness to most of the significant events that the history of the city can give. This is 200 years old this year, this building. So if one thinks of all of the happiest and saddest times in the history of Halifax, St. Mary's Basilica has been there for all of them. The Basilica has been here to see the Titanic. It's been here at the beginning of World War I. It was here during the Great Depression. It was here for World War II. Now we're in uncharted territory with a pandemic, with coronavirus. And the Basilica has been a witness to struggle and to joy in the city's life, and it will continue to be, I'm sure. I find the most interesting and historic element of the Basilica, it's hard to actually identify one single event. This building is 200 years old. It has occupied a central place in the life of the city, and in that regard, it has been a great witness to all of the great events that Halifax has experienced, whether that is of joy or of sorrow. So one might think of people coming here upon hearing of the outbreak of war. One might think of those who have many happy personal family memories here. My hope and vision for the Basilica's future is that in many ways it keeps its place doing what it has been doing for the past 200 years. It occupies a central location in Halifax. It is a natural meeting and converging space, and I hope that in 200 years' time, we are still talking about St. Mary's Cathedral Basilica as a place where people feel welcome, where it makes sense for them to naturally drop in, to pray, to find quiet, solace in their lives.
So my impression of the cathedral and the basilica has been goes back to a number of years now. When I first came to Halifax, maybe 30 years ago, I first came to and saw the basilica and was quite impressed by the building for a number of reasons. First of all, that it's right downtown and it's in the downtown area, which serves people who are around in this area of the city. But it's also on one of the corners of two of the busiest streets in Halifax. And so there's a real sense that the cathedral, the basilica, is in fact at the heart of the city, at the heart of a very important center of the city. And so it strikes me that says something about our faith as well, that the church as a sacred space, the cathedral of the sacred space of the diocese, is a very important space for people to realize that it's there. And the fact that it's present in such an important area also speaks to people as well. And so people walking up and down Spring Garden Road or along Barrington Street are very aware of the building, and so I think that's the first thing that struck me many years ago. Since I've come here now as bishop, I've been struck in a new way by just the beauty of the building itself. The fact of the windows are very very instructive, but they're beautiful windows and beautiful stained glass, and so I think that that really adds to the building itself. So that my impressions then are really impressions of how important this building is as a beautiful piece of art in the city itself.
Well, my relationship to the cathedral, of course, started when I was appointed here as Archbishop of Halifax, 10 years, if not longer. And so that made my relationship to this place very special and very unique. My favorite memory probably goes back to the first time that I celebrated the Chrism Mass here at the cathedral when I came. The Chrism Mass, maybe it's because it's on my mind right at the moment. We're getting ready for Holy Week, and the Chrism Mass is the first event that takes place in Holy Week, and that's when we gather all the priests, all the deacons, all the representatives of the different parishes to come together for this very special Mass where we consecrate the oil that's used for all of the celebration of the sacraments in all of the parishes. So we gather to prepare that, and then we pass on this to the pastors, and they bring it to their respective churches, and they use this oil for baptism, for the anointing of the sick, and for confirmation. Now, why that's significant for me is because up until that moment, I had been a bishop, and I had been an auxiliary bishop, and as a priest for 50 years almost, on the day when we have the Chrism Mass, a priest renews his promises and his vows of obedience to the bishop. Well, this was the first time that I had this church full of priests and full of people, and they were making the renewal of their obedience to me. You know, all that I've been saying about the cathedral and the basilica, it only makes sense if people understand how they are connected to this place. So, for instance, this building isn't just like any other church building. Every other church building right across the diocese is actually an extension of this place. So every parish, every church is an extension of this particular place. We always speak of one bishop, one church, and one people. If you go outside this cathedral on the three doors, there are over the three doors, three expressions: one faith, one baptism, one Lord. But the extension of that is there's one church and there's one bishop. And so every other parish is not some sort of independent, autonomous congregation. The relationship is that everyone is a member of the cathedral community. And so everyone, no matter where they are, belong to this place. And that's why everyone is expected to look after this place and to provide for it and to support it in whatever way it does. So the cathedral is to the churches of the diocese, in a way, what the bishop is to the priests of the diocese. One cannot function without the other. And so that's what I think people ought to think and feel about this place. I don't know if everyone actually feels that way. But certainly what I've observed over the years that I've been here is that for many Haligonians, this is a very special and significant place. One of those reasons is because of where it is. It's right at the heart of downtown. It's right at the most important corner of the city. So it's become an iconic place. That wasn't always the case. When this building was first built 200 years ago, it was probably outside the city. And it was probably not an accident that it is across the street from a burial ground. In fact, that it's on a burial ground. It's because that's where people were buried, outside the city. Now, there's reasons for that historically. And that was just the way it was at the time. We were under British rule. Laws of Britain applied, and Catholics were not considered necessarily as every other citizen was at the time. But circumstances have changed, and who would have thought 200 years ago that this building would find itself right at the most important corner of Halifax? And people walk by it every day, and I wonder how many people would feel that something was missing if this place wasn't where it is, so that they could walk by it every day. I think that's an important relationship of the people around this particular building. The Cathedral Basilica is an iconic building for all those who walk around it and see it every day. I mean, we're surrounded by thousands of people who ordinarily work downtown, and so this place, people relate to it even sometimes unconsciously. But there are those for whom this place is a very significant building for all kinds of reasons, not all necessarily religious or faith. There are people who associate this place with its architecture. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard over the last number of years, in the summertime particularly, when the tourist bus goes by and they're explaining what's happening here, somebody say, well, this is the highest granite belfry in North America or whatever. They're making reference to the architecture. And the architecture is Gothic or Neo-Gothic. And it is unique because what you see is not found anywhere else. So this place is important for its architectural value. There's a beauty to the place which people appreciate. When people come in here, and there's thousands of tourists that ordinarily come here, especially when they're here with cruise ships and whatnot, and they walk in here, the first thing they notice are the stained glass windows. Now, those stained glass windows go back quite a long time. They were prepared in Europe. They are of great artistic value. We repaired 3 of them in recent months, and costs a fortune to pay for just one. But it's worth doing because of the value of the art that is captured in these windows. But it's not just in that artistic way that this place is significant. This building is of significance not only to people of faith, but it's of significance to the regular citizen of this city, to music lovers, to lovers of art, and it's available. It's available. All they have to do is walk in. Historically, this basilica has been the identifying mark for those who are of the Catholic faith. That's why the word basilica is so significant for so many. Well, we're celebrating the last 200 years, and I think we have good reason to celebrate. But as we do that, when we look to the past, we're also looking to the future. And as we look to the future, without knowing what the future holds, I would still hope that the future of this cathedral basilica would continue to play its role and vocation in the lives and in the hearts of certainly the Catholic faithful, but also all the others with whom there's a relationship to this building. I would hope that this building in 200 years will continue to signify an important presence and a set of values and a perspective on the meaning of life, which is embodied in the gospel which gets preached here and in the service and ministry that gets offered out of here to those who are in need and to those who are in any way looking for meaning in their lives. So the building itself is significant, but what gives the building its true significance is what it means in the minds and hearts of the people who come to it. And I would hope that many will continue to come to this building to find here something of the presence of God.